last thing, and normally I just watch it at the office because I don't feel like doing anything else. Okay. Alrighty, well, we are recording. We'll do like a clap like we did before because I think that's a fun way to start it. Yeah. And then I also know like when to. I'm like, all right, this is where I clip it. Yeah. So, fucking, here we go.
Crushed it.
Sick. Amazing. All right, well, welcome back, everybody, to episode 3 of A Little Dicey, podcast edition. My name is Salvatore Sabraka, joined as always by my co-host, Mack-san. So, yeah, this is episode 3, man. We've done this 3 times already. Isn't that fun?
Can I intercede with something that's completely irrelevant to what we're going to be talking about?
Yeah, go for it.
The way that you just said my name, it's the same way that I usually say my name.
Yeah.
And sometimes when I'm talking to like a telemarketer or whatever, or like a customer relationships person, they think my name is Mac. And I'm like, whose name is Mac? No offense to any Macs out there.
Yeah.
But bro, my name's not Mac.
Mac.
But it's just like Matt, you know, it's like Matt.
Mack-san.
It's Mack-san.
Yeah. So they.
Anyway, so for the audience,
so funny.
My name's not Mac.
Matt.
Don't get it twisted. You'll get headbutted.
I will make sure to super enunciate my T's the next time I say that.
Yeah.
Or I'll just say Matthew.
Oh.
It's too personal.
Anyway.
Yeah, man. How are you right now? How's it going?
I'm good. Good. I got a fresh oil change.
I'm very excited for you.
So for 7,000 miles, I'm going to be running full steam ahead.
Damn. 7,000? Do you do the one? This is true.
We're going to have to cut this whole thing.
Yeah. It's just Metro Detroit, like, hour right now for everybody watching. Yeah. Excuse me. I had a Greek salad before you got here, so the feta cheese is just sitting in my throat, so I can't wait for that.
I thought you smelled extra salty.
Oh yeah,
today.
Oh yeah, lots of salt in that salad. I am dehydrated. But damn it, man, let's talk some Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah,
how about it?
Let's do it.
So kind of from now on, or I don't know, we'll change it eventually, I'm sure, or whatever, however we feel. Yeah. But I kind of want to start these episodes off just talking as much as we want about, I want to hear what your current thoughts are about like our campaign going on right now. If you have any questions or anything like that, just, or, you know, comments, concerns, or just, you know, things that you have been enjoying so far and whatnot. I think that I'm really enjoying the pacing right now.
Yeah.
I feel like you guys are looking around like Justin. I mean, obviously do whatever you want. I'm not, right. But for me, DMing, I feel like you guys are looking around just enough. You guys are, you know, doing fun side things or just doing things in general that you would want to do while also like, you know, following the through thread of whatever's going on here and whatnot. So I think our pacing's really, really on top of it right now. But I mean, we've only done 5 episodes so far, so who knows?
Yeah, though it's first of all, I totally agree. It's one of the things that, you know, we had a little recap of. Let's kind of do the post-mortem on campaign 1, going into campaign 2. And one of the things we talked about, because campaign 1, we were kind of constantly in danger. And it really worked, I think, especially in the first arc of that campaign that was not streamed. But the way we went from kind of just like doing kind of a simple errand to almost like a hostage situation was really cool. And it was one of the first times playing a tabletop RPG that I really was like feeling the weight and the pressure of the situation as a person, right? It's like my blood pressure is going up because of the situation my character is in.
Yeah.
But just the way that story unfolded is we spent a lot of time either sort of being like chased or, you know, in some way pursued. And there was always kind of like, there's this kind of frantic pace. And going into this campaign, it's actually been really, I don't want to say it's been chill, but it's been really fun to have that, the freedom to, it's not that we don't feel like we have anything to do and there's nothing to pull us forward, but especially early in a campaign to have the freedom to just kind of like, well, we can take time to have a moment here because there's nobody that's dying over there.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And in in our last episode, there's a moment where I just as a player started laughing, and I'm like, I'm having way too much fun.
Hell yeah.
Just being this person.
Yeah.
To allow the scene to move forward. You know, I think we were just like, we're in the bar, Cassandra's performing. I think I have the timing of the episode right, but basically like, and that's really fun. You know, I think a lot of times, whether you're, probably it's particularly a trap for DMs, is like the feeling like you need to constantly be like giving your players something to do.
Right.
And sometimes it's just really fun just being a turtle with a Texas accent.
Yeah, 100%.
You know,
No, I completely agree. I think that there's definitely a time and a place, and I realized this when I sat down when I was preparing to get you guys into the new campaign. When I was sitting down and just sort of looking at like I have like that campaign diary.
Yeah.
That I would basically recap with you guys all. So I think it's something 50 plus pages of like recaps of every single session, right? And all this stuff. And I was like reading through it, and I was just like, man, like there were times where I'm like, there's too much going on right now. Like, you know what I mean? For like, there's just too much in your face. I think in the beginning, it started off pretty, like the pacing was pretty much, in my opinion, I thought the pacing was pretty good up until once you guys finished up with the Dawnlight situation and then like moved it basically all went awry when you guys were supposed to go to the Frigid North, but like that just didn't end up happening. Yeah. And then from there, I was like, well, fuck, like I can't
you failed to take into consideration that we had Agent of Chaos Jenna on the team.
It's very true. Agents of Chaos Jenna, but also at the same time, shouts out to Alex, a friend of ours that was a part of our first campaign. Both Agent of Chaos Jenna just as herself, and then Alex's character, Lux, just sort of like would constantly make decisions that it was just, which is fine. Like I'm not, whatever. They were just making decisions that I'd be like, okay, shit. Like, all right, now I have to like do this, this, and this, which I love as a DM because that, you know, I mean, if I prepared, and I prepared pretty far in advance, like I have this entire first arc sort of written out for you.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean that I don't go in and change things from session to session. I do that because you guys make choices, and I'm like, all right, so that's something I didn't account for. Yeah. You know, you improv in the game, it's fun, and then I have to just make sure. Thank God we record these, and obviously it's great for people watching. But again, I think I said this in the first episode that we did here. But like, quick DM tip: if you're playing and your players, you know, do something that you're like, oh shit, I gotta like, and you improv it, great. If you're not writing that down, fucking find a way to remember that as fast as possible. Like you have to write it down if you're not recording it. I highly recommend if you guys are you know, doing your shit virtually, which a lot of people are right now because of the pandemic, which is totally understandable. Get vaccinated, by the way. Get your booster and all that shit too. Record yourself if you're doing it virtually. Like it's so easy. It's just a click of a button. Just make sure you have some storage and just record your sessions, and then you can know what you did. I know in a very old episode of like, I think Geek and Sundry did a series called DM Tips with Matt Mercer. And there's some great, it's basically the foundation of like any Dungeons and Dragons like DMing guide video, really. It's like that, and then I think Satine Phoenix took that over after Matt got too busy with Crit Roll and everything. And then I also really loved Matt Colville's Running the Game series. So I think those three are really paramount to that. But
little difference in weight between DM Tips and Running the Game.
100%. Running the Game is extremely intensive, and I highly recommend that. I think that's usually the first thing I always tell people who are like, oh, I want to get into it. And I think I want to, like, I don't have anybody else to do whatever, so I want to DM. And I'm like, just watch Matt Colville's videos. And then maybe, like, if you want to lean more towards role play, maybe like watch an episode of D20 and just watch how Brendan Lee Mulligan just interacts with people. And then if you really want to get a really really good idea of like the scope of what you can do, just watch like an episode of Critical Role, just like see what Mercer does and like about like where he takes the game. But the very first tip I think on there was like, hey, if the players are going to do crazy shit, make sure you're writing down what you're making up, because there have been many times from session to session where you guys will bring something up. It's actually, I'll say it, this happened last session. It was the beginning of episode 5, and you were like, it was right after, for those of you who maybe haven't caught up or whatever, it was right after you guys had finished the encounter in the lighthouse, and then we picked up right after that, and you immediately said, which I'd completely forgotten about, even though I watched through my shit, and I'm like, I make notes and everything, I just didn't write this down, or for whatever reason, you literally immediately said, is the pyre light still blue? And for the first, I answered you right away, because I didn't want to seem like I didn't know. Mm-hmm. But while I was answering you, I had no idea what you were fucking talking about. I was like, what do you... And then I was like, yeah, because like you wouldn't just... I know you would know that. You wouldn't just whatever. So...
Did I still gain that extra level at the end of last session?
Of course. Yeah. That's how you can trick anybody into doing that. But then immediately after I said it, I was like, that's right. The prestidigitation to do that, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Technically, it wouldn't have been, but...
Because it only lasts...
It only lasts X amount of time. But then I think I sort of like half retconned it when I said like, and it dissipated at that point, and then or whatever. So
yeah, sometimes those little like illusory effects or whatever. So when Garrett did it in the previous session, I wasn't sure, because you don't always know what's in your fellow players' heads, right?
Right.
He might have had something very specific he was trying to do, but also I know that sometimes when you have things on your character sheet, you just want to use them.
Right. Yeah. And Thaumaturgy is a great spell to. I think I said prestidigitation earlier. It was Thaumaturgy. It was super fun spell.
And so like my thought was like the reason I brought it up is because it was giving Garrett a chance to either be like, yeah, I did that for a reason and here's what it is,
right?
Or oh no, I just wanted to turn it blue. And my fear was that Sal would remember and then have people like, oh my god,
why is it blue?
Why is it blue? Yeah. And I'll come running and so yeah.
That's definitely something I could have fallen through on. Which another thing to sort of tie in what we were talking about of how like the pacing sort of went a little bit awry. My favorite thing as a DM to do is, infuse the game with consequences, right? Like a lot of people who maybe like fantasy or like RPG games in general, like if you're playing video games, there are very, very few exceptions in which your actions like legitimately inform what happens in the rest of the game. Yeah. You can sort of a half and half. I'm playing Skyrim again right now just because I like to do it like during this time of year. And it's sort of half and half in that game, right? Like if you go to Whiterun and you kill a guard, you have a bounty on your head and they arrest you, whatever. But then after that, that's it. Yeah. There's nothing else that happens. It's just you go, it does a loading screen, you pay your fine, and then you're fined like whatever. Mm-hmm. But like, and that's a video game, which is great, right? Like if I'm playing a video game, I don't want to be like, oh, I fucking have to think about every single move. You know what I mean? Like, There's a fun in that to a degree, but when I'm playing video games, I just want to like, I'm doing a challenge and like there's fun little lore here, whatever. But in Dungeons and Dragons, in my opinion, it's a fundamentally different experience because you're not just, I mean, some people are, but you're not just playing the game to level up and like, I just beat this level or I just cleared this dungeon. Sure, that's how it was originally sort of set up, but the purpose of this game in particular, like if you don't want to like do the role playing or you don't want to whatever, just play Warhammer. Like that, there are games like for that that are very popular. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, giving consequences to actions, even if they seem minuscule, right? Like, so could have been a great opportunity for me to jump on the blue flame thing. I had other things that I was taking notes on, whatever, but for anybody who's, watching that maybe wants to DM or is a DM or just like starts off or whatever, but like pick things that happen in the game that you think like, oh, you know what? I'm sure they're not even, maybe someone is. pick things that the players don't might think are just arbitrary, like, oh, I did a fun thing. Like, oh, I walked into the to use another thaumaturgy example, I walked into the bar and I made all the windows open when I walked in, and a breeze blew in and I had glowing red eyes. You could literally do all that with thaumaturgy with just one spell, a cantrip. You don't even weave any signs, you don't say anything, it just happens. Or maybe it's verbal. I don't remember.
That's probably not actually true. I personally, I like forgiving the components on those.
The smaller ones, it's fine.
The kind of ribbon, whatever they would call them, like the purely fun flavor.
Yeah, the flavor cantrips.
Just because it's more fun. You know, if you're a tiefling, it's way more fun to just say my eyes glow bright, than to say I cast a spell and then my eyes glow bright.
Yeah.
And like because those flavor cantrips are so difficult to do anything like how do you break a flavor cantrip? You really can't.
You really can't.
So the player isn't getting any mechanical advantage or anything by doing that. It just makes it more fun.
Right.
So they probably do have somatic and all those things, but like.
Yeah, they definitely don't have material that wouldn't make any sense to me. But yeah, anyways, you do that, and then you're like, oh, it was fun. I made a cool entrance. But now, unbeknownst to you as the player, next session, you start hearing rumors about how there's this new person in town, and they're rumored to be like a witch or something like that. And then you're like, oh, who the fuck are they talking about? And then someone runs up and is like, you're the witch that whatever. And you're like, I'm not. What are you talking about? I've just blah, blah. And they're like, but the window, you know what I mean? Like, and then from then on, you can, like, as a DM, you can prepare little mini encounters, like even on the streets, where someone is like, I don't know, they're maybe wherever they are, they're like, we don't fucking like wizards here or whatever. And like, you're like, I'm a like, you're not even a wizard class or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, as a player, you'd probably be like, I'm a bard or whatever. And they're like, you do magic, we're going to kick your ass. You know what I mean? It's like small things like that.
Burn the witch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Are really engaging.
Yeah, for sure. I think, and you know, when we say consequences, it doesn't necessarily have to mean that like, oh, I'm going to punish my players for doing things, right? I think actually finding a small thing, sort of like you suggested, that you can do that with, will teach your players that they're able to do things that they can't do in a video game. Right. So at one point in our, and that stuff is just fun, you know, at one point in our last campaign, my character felt slighted by a local shopkeep, right? And
one of my favorite moments, by the way, from that.
And before we left that town, I just started walking around town spreading rumors, kind of like that, you know, she was surveilling people through, you know, enchantments in her wares that would, you know, listen and watch. And I basically tried to sully her reputation through rumor. There's probably a video game where there's a mechanic that's kind of mirroring that.
Sure.
But certainly it's not a common thing to find. And, you know, there was no immediate, like, it's not like I told a few people this and then immediately you're like, okay, cool. And then they storm her shop and they take her away. You know what I mean? But we never returned. But had the campaign not ended early, I presume we would have at some point returned to that city.
Sure, certainly,
and nothing would have made me happier than to find that something had happened because of that little thing that I did. If, you know, not necessarily that her like shop no longer existed or she had been ruined, but even just like, you know, if you return and you see her and she's a little bit ragged and she's like in a smaller building and you're like, well, what happened? And she's like, oh, you know, business is tough these days. You know? Like those are things that you can't do in a video game.
No.
And it's one of the best parts of D&D and definitely something that you can show your players that their choices are meaningful by picking out little things. It's also not to go into this point, but it's also something that I see all the time in forums is like, my players won't stop killing people. How do I write? And again, you can't tell your players not to stab the local shopkeep, but you can have an angry mob chase them for killing
and tell them you can't stab the local. Yeah.
Right. You know.
Yes.
So these are the ways that you can both enhance and to some degrees control your game to some degree.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree. So speaking of the game in general, then, feel free to not answer a question or anything like that. But I'm interested in knowing where sort of kill stands on certain things right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I guess first and foremost, the most immediate sort of encounters that you just had, right? Which I like that we're doing this on Tuesdays now, and it's sort of going right before the game, so like people watching can get sort of an insight, an incentive into what you're thinking. And this is also good for people who are players, and they're like, there's really not a lot of homework you need to do as a player, as compared to a DM or anything really, between sessions. But I recommend like thinking about this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, you guys just sort of entered into like a very, what seemed originally, and even on my end, the way I prepared this was very minor. It was supposed to be a fun thing that you guys were supposed to win easy, get a little a little minor reward from, and just give you a victory leading into what I believe is probably going to be like the more difficult end of what this first little mini arc, right? This sort of like quote unquote tutorial island situation, and the encounter was basically set up on my end.
Doty, take this down.
Yeah,
Tutorial Island sounds like a dope game to play.
Tutorial Island is dope.
A dope one shot in the future.
100%.
Yeah. Anyway.
But the way I wrote it was that originally all of you were going to be here, right? So we were out one player. Jamie was sick. He was sitting out. Great. So I was like, all right. The way I balanced it originally was they were going to be 3 sort of like dudes at the bar when you guys got back, and they would either approach you or it worked out well because you guys tried to find a seat somewhere. So I was like, oh, I'm going to sit you right next to them. So you guys talk. They're going to try to convince you to go on a treasure hunt with them. Seems like a great bait. So you guys, I had no problem. I had no doubt in my mind that you guys would take it, and you do. I figured that you guys would ask a bit more and notice that they were a bit more shady than they seemed to be. You guys rolled pretty low on insight checks in general, and their deception rolled pretty high, and they seemed fine. And then no one did anything further than that. Yeah. Which is fine. It makes sense that you guys wouldn't really do anything more than that. There may be, again, Garrett had said this, he was waiting for the opportunity to do something. I figured he would be pushing on certain things, but he just sort of was like, I'm going to bide my time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Jenna called for an insight check.
Yep.
And they obviously rolled good enough to not only beat her insight, which I think was only 11.
Yeah, it wasn't.
And also beat my passive insight,
which I do have written down.
And at the same time, I called for sort of a check to sort of take a deeper look at the map that they presented, and I think Matt as a player was distracted by the map, but also Kill as a character, I think. Apparently didn't discern anything on the map that made him believe that the map was fake.
Right.
And so assuming that the map is then legitimate, I think it's, sometimes it's fun to justify the mechanics with little bits of flavor. And so I just presume, hey, that this is a legitimate treasure map. I like maps.
Oh yeah.
I'm not going to dig too far into the rest of it, right? Because I'm excited.
Yeah.
And we all do this as people, right? We get excited about something that we want to believe is true, and we just accept it at face value. So there we headed off, and
you got to the spot where you figured the treasure to be, and each of you chose to do a separate action, which occupied all of you. And that sort of presented the opportunity for these thugs to just sort of jump you, which was the plan all along. The plan on my end was to have these people show up, want to do a treasure hunt with you. You guys leave. I thought that you guys would end up what I wanted to happen was that you guys would get the jump on them.
Yeah.
Like, sort of turn it around and be like, how we outsmarted you. That would have been fun. The combat would have gone completely different, but they got the jump on you, got a surprise round in, hit very hard. And not to mention, I rebalanced it so that it was 3-on-2 rather than 4-on-3, which is originally what it was supposed to be. And then it proved to be the most difficult combat so far in the game.
Oh yeah, not close.
They're not close. Yes.
Like there was that could have easily been a TPK.
Yes, certainly. Yeah, and part of me likes that it was so difficult, but there was another part of me where I was like, shit, like I just, it's one of those instances where the dice just, and here's another thing. I think some people, I think even Colville suggests this. This is just something I just disagree with. I don't believe that you should be fudging rolls. I think that if the dice roll something, you play it how it lies. That's the point of having dice. I know that some people are like, whatever about, well, I don't want it to end here or whatever. You can choose to make different choices as the DM and then roll and then see what the dice say. Mm-hmm. I don't think that you should make a choice, roll, and then go, okay, it's a natural 20. I miss. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like just make them make different choices. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I agree exactly with that. You can change the enemy's tactics.
Yep.
You could decide Deus Ex Machina shows up and changes the scenario. But once you roll the dice, I think you gotta go with it. Because otherwise, right? Someday when one of us does die, then it's not the dice that killed us, it's you killed us.
It's me, right. Which
you decided to kill us.
Exactly.
If you allow yourself to alter dice or die rolls. So
exactly.
I agree with you.
Yeah. And so it ended up, everyone ended up alive, which is great. Mm-hmm. And you guys overcame the situation.
Yeah.
Hilariously, and I was waiting for this moment to happen because it hadn't really happened yet. There have been a couple of small moments where I was like, oh, this is funny, and it's not like detrimental to the game, but it's not detrimental to you as players. It's just like, oh, this is a funny interaction. I was waiting for the moment where chat would make a decision with the channel rewards that would really affect what is going on. It really hadn't happened yet until now.
Yeah.
So if anybody doesn't know, we have, while we play, anybody in chat, if you have enough channel points, can redeem channel rewards, and our chat moderator, Michaela, will let us know what has been redeemed, and we will do it. One of them is a Wild Magic Surge, because we have a sorcerer in the party. I wanted to keep that a part of the redemptions because I figured it would be fun and whatever. And I had a mechanic to make it happen, right? And to go, Jamie's character would just pop in, do a surge, and then teleport out because he can't control his surges right now. Whatever.
Basically being like constantly banished or like a
Correct.
blink.
Yes,
right?
he'd
like
be blinking in and out. Yeah. Exactly like that. And chat rolled that at the very top of this, or chat redeemed that reward, the Wild Magic Surge, at the top of the initiative, and I rolled for him on the D100, and on the table it was you cast Danse Macabre, and you raise a skeleton and a zombie, and they go buck wild. And so I was like, well, fuck. It turned from what was originally, if we had all the players here, 4 of you against 3. Their stat sheets were thug, and then I changed a couple things. I gave them pack tactics for certain pairings and whatnot, and then I gave one of them a couple spells, and then I gave them potions or whatever. So it was balanced.
Yeah.
If it was just 3 thugs, you guys would wipe the floor with them in 2 rounds probably.
Yeah.
And so it turned from what was supposed to be 3 thugs against you 4 players into 2 thugs against 3 players plus a skeleton and a zombie. Granted, I didn't have them aggro you right away. I just used a D6, rolled it, and then decided who they attacked. But more often than not, they were attacking you.
Well, yeah, it's 60%. They're going to attack one of us,
right?
And I think the first like 3 times it was against us.
First 3 times it was, yeah. And they hit.
And they hit me.
Yep.
With an AC of 20.
Yeah.
I got hit at least twice by those things, and they did very significant damage.
Yes, it was a D6 plus 1 or 2 or something like that was the damage that they were dealing, and I was consistently to hit. And I think it was plus 3 to hit. I was consistently rolling 18s to hit, 18
like
pluses, like the whole night on everything, which was crazy. And then I was consistently rolling like 4 to 6s on the D6. So I was high end rolling to attack and high end rolling for damage. And just the compound nature of that and the fact that you guys were outnumbered when you were never supposed to be made it way, way more difficult than it should have been. And I just want to know, all that being said, after that happened, all these other things leading up, like, where is Kill at sort of in his state of mind, his immediate sort of thoughts? I know that we're going to be streaming tomorrow and you'll have a chance to, like, act this out and whatnot, but I'm just interested to know, these few couple, I think it's been 2 or 3 days now in game. I'm just interested to know where his sort of mind is at.
Yeah. This is these opportunities are fun because in our game we don't generally exposit because it's just not good theater.
I don't, and I also don't think I don't know, play whatever. I don't like it when players do that. I hate it. I'm just like, dude, just make a choice and then, like, if it comes up, it comes up. Act what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like, if you feel sad about something, like, I hate it when people are like, oh, well, Kill is sad right now.
Right.
I'm like, fucking show me on your face. Yeah. Do it.
Yeah, it's and I'll get into it in a second, but it is fun. A lot of D&D characters, of course, have a dark secret, right?
Of course.
Which you hold deep within for maybe a year of real time. But, like, being able to act your growth instead of state your growth, or even just your state of mind, is like these tiny little secrets that you get to have constantly, right?
Absolutely.
So instead of just being like, Kill was deeply affected by this last scenario, and this is how it's going to change him. You just act it. But anyway, so I think a few things came to mind after that session as I've thought about it throughout the week. Not just in that session, but kind of in general. So, and I talked about this even a little bit in the pilot when I talked about the sort of the mindset or the design for Kill and wanting to make him sort of inhumanly neutral, right? And I made the comment that there's probably basically no neutral characters in D&D, and I do think that that's for good reason in a lot of ways, because typically how would neutrality manifest would be in apathy, right? And you can't have a player in a game be like, I don't feel like it.
Anytime you're not doing anything.
Then you're not doing anything, right? And so your characters have to want to do things in order for them to exist in this game, really. So the challenge with Kill is to make him feel neutral without ever being apathetic, because that's sort of the antithesis of him, right? He's adventuring for the sake of the adventure, and not for any other particular goal. And so what's interesting is the way that I've been able to get him interested in defeating the monster rather than just let the monster do its thing, is this sort of like alpha nature to want to be king of the mountain, right? So when he's fighting the Nana Bush, it's like, oh, you're gonna try to take me out, I'm gonna take you out, right? Same thing with the Gnolls, like, hey, if you want to go toe to toe with the halflings, that's fine. But then when they called me out, it's like, oh, okay, now I'm in it. So, so what ends up being interesting then is when Kill finds himself in this fight that's not going very well, and we're outnumbered, and tactically what I'm doing, probably largely as a player, is fulfilling my role of being a little bit tanky and trying to wedge myself in between the danger and the players. Especially because we have this fun little homebrew roll mechanic that I was able to use very successfully in this last session.
It was great
to basically disengage, the hurting characters that are, of lower AC and less hit points, whatever. But as the fight was playing out, Kill keeps putting himself in danger to protect the other people, and as a player, I'm wrestling with, does this make sense for the character?
Right.
Would this character possibly die to save these other people? Does that feel neutral in the way that I want to be? The other thing that's interesting about, one of the many things I think is interesting about Turtles, but they have this like mentality that like, there's really no hallowed ground they don't really care about their homeland in the sense that like home is on my back, right? So they sort of famously will flee.
Oh yeah.
Right? They don't feel this like weird pride thing to defend a place. So how do I be a good party member and player and protect my fellow players and their characters, which is what they would want and which is what I would want, but also stay true to the character and not sort of overreach for some sense of good or whatever. And I think that that's going to be my challenge through this whole campaign, right? Is making him feel consistent while being a good teammate on the team as a player. And so in this fight, the way that I played it is that, to be honest, I'm just glad he didn't die.
Yeah, no, it's understandable.
Because I was hoping that I could get through the fight and then adjust.
Yeah.
Having learned through what happened in the fight, and thankfully I was not. I though very, very close in sort of that last round where I was able to take out a couple of people with a thunder wave. I never felt like I was really in the position where I either run or die this turn.
Right.
Particularly because Cassander has healing spells, and whatever. So, with all that being said, the fight is now over. And how is Kill feeling? I think a few things. One, he doesn't really, because he's been so limited in his contact with other people, these like notions of sort of like, defending others and even really what it means to be friends with somebody are very kind of immature and surface level. And so he's got to decide, like, oh, like I did this once and that really could have gone poorly. I mean, for sure it was cloudy skies, so he's remembering that there is danger when you don't have the protection
right.
of the eye in the sky. But I think there's going to be some conversations about, tactics.
Sure.
And like, basically like, hey guys, Kill's been alone and effective as sort of top of the food chain, so to speak, on his island. And I think there's going to be some real conversations about the party members fulfilling what they need to do. Basically, like, hey, you guys can't. I'm not used to being held down,
right.
held back. And how do we come to terms with that? And that's going to be a conversation more than something that I'm just going to purely act out.
Sure.
But he's definitely like, hey, being a part of a crew is dangerous.
Right. Yeah.
More dangerous than being alone. The other big thing that I think he's learned is that humanoids are dangerous in a way that beasts are not, in that they are treacherous.
Yes.
And they apparently lack the honor that beasts in the wild have.
Right. Yeah, beasts don't have concepts of lying or whatever.
Right.
That's not a thing to perforate their environment.
Yeah. If I had I'll go ahead and say this on here because I didn't have a chance to say it in game, but had Garrett not taken the killing blow, Kill would have. Mm-hmm. And whether he would have said it direct, let's be real, he would have said it because it's a dope line. I would have said something like, your energy would be better used elsewhere.
Fuck yeah.
Right. So I think this will manifest in some distrust.
Sure.
And what'll be interesting is to what degree is he distrustful, right? Is he going to be like, well, I guess what humanoids do on this island is stab each other in the back, and I'll just do that whenever I want because apparently that's what people do. That's the culture of humanity, is to just stab people in the back when it suits you, right? That'll have consequences if that's what he chooses to do. Maybe it'll be a little more subtle than that. So what's fun is I don't have to entirely decide how those will affect him long term right now.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes in the game. But those are the things that I'm going to be thinking about as we go back and begin interacting with the world again, is that basically like these humanoids are not to be trusted. they have no honor, and we'll go from there.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Well, that's, first of all, very cool. Very cool and interesting insight. Lots for me to think about too. Yeah. I'm just like, oh, okay, cool. Good to know. Because it's I think it's equally as important as a player to really think about like what your actions and what the situation sort of mean for you and for how you're going to continue on. It's equally as important to think of that as it is important for me as a DM to go, okay, how are they reacting to these things? What's the more interesting path to take for them? What will be, fulfilling for them to overcome? Because if you're struggling with like, well, where does Kill fit in this new culture? Like, or how is he going to make these choices with all this new stimuli, like being around him and whatnot? And then I just go, I just throw like, there's an evil turtle now, and then like you gotta fight him, and you're like, all right, I guess, you know what I mean? Like, that's not fun. That's just like, you have to pay attention to what's going on. So, very good things to,
interesting.
To know there.
I have a question for you, actually.
Yes.
Along the same lines. So, I kind of talked a minute ago about sort of taking the results of the die roll and making it make sense through narrative. When you've now set up a fight that you didn't expect to be difficult, but in reality, let's forget about the zombie and the skeleton for a minute. And maybe your answer will be like, no, that's actually the crux that I'm going to use. But how do you, in your mind, we're level 3.
Yes.
We're not like level 10.
No.
We're level 3, but still at level 3, we're pretty powerful compared to the normal person, right? Even if, let's say, level 1 is just kind of like an above average person, like at level 3 we're already the star athletes and the whatever,
and on top of that, not to interrupt, but you guys are also, with the exception of, I mean, actually Jamie's really good mechanically anyways. I was gonna say wild magic sorcerer is not necessarily like the most like OP subclass or whatever. The three of you are playing very powerful versions of the classes that you're playing. The Spore Druid mechanically can output the most damage out of any of the druids. Melee damage. The type of rogue that Garrett is easily the best in combat of any of the rogues. And then the homebrew class or the homebrew subclass that I made for Jenna is pretty good. It's I mean, I'll let you take a look at it eventually, but like it's very strong, especially when you get towards like level 8. So
yeah, Garrett does good damage. I do good, especially for low level play. Spore druids, they certainly, I mean, they're still druids, so they don't fall off in the sense that like, they're so sad. But like, particularly at low level play, my melee attacks and whatever are perfectly good. I've struggled to make good use just because of the way it's worked out of my kind of core ability, just because every time I use it, I get wrecked the following turn, and then it ends up not doing anything.
And then it's like whatever.
But anyway, so my question is, basically, ultimately what has happened is that there's 2 thugs in a bar that are running kind of just a sketchy scheme, right? And basically those 2 thugs almost killed the 3 of us, like adventurers. And so when we talk about things that Kill takes from it is not only that humanoids are dangerous because they're conniving, but also that like maybe random dude in a bar is as scary as giant flying bird monster, right? Giant flying aberrations. And so my question to you is sort of narratively, or how do you think about it in terms of sort of world building and context that these 2 thugs in a bar almost killed your 3 adventurers?
Yeah, great question. The first thing I know that you did mention it, but I have to mention the fact that I promise you, if it were not the case that the skeleton and the zombie showed up because of the wild magic surge from chat. So like in any other case, right? In any other game that is not streamed, or even if it is streamed that doesn't have audience interaction, or even if they have audience interaction, doesn't have a wild magic sorcerer that you could then wild surge or whatever.
Yeah.
Or has all that and just rolls a different thing, right?
Right.
It simply happened that at the beginning of this fight, it was, in my opinion, balanced toward your favor, which is what I wanted, and immediately became unbalanced in my favor. Mm-hmm. So I have to acknowledge that. Sure. That being said, they still had a plan, the thugs. Mm-hmm. They still executed that plan, almost succeeded. They had the same mindset that you are looking at it on your end. They see themselves as the adventurers. Granted, they are the quote-unquote evil versions of the adventurers because they're willing to... They just wanted money, or they just wanted to take whatever you had. Yeah. So they were willing to run a scheme on you, right? There's nothing stopping you guys from going to the bar, taking this map, and running a scheme on some poor soul and just taking whatever they have, right? Yeah. Nothing stopping you from doing that, other than probably not the most fun experience at the table, but whatever, maybe it is. And the point of that was supposed to show that you guys are the heroes, right? You guys are the adventurers. They are not. What it ended up doing was showing you that the world is very dangerous. Yeah. And it's true that two random dudes at the bar can probably take it to the limit.
Yeah, and especially, given strong coordination.
Absolutely, which they had.
Mechanically
they had that. And when I was writing for them, any sort of encounters like this, and I recommend this for any DM, I really don't like... I do love the tip of the orcs attack tip that Colville had like a whole video on. He's like, sometimes when my players... The base of the video is basically sometimes the players get stuck in either... paralysis by analysis, or like they can't make a decision, or they're just not like they're not like moving the story on because they're stuck on something. Mm-hmm. And he's like, honestly, sometimes when that happens, I'm just like, fuck it, encounter, and then like I just these orcs show up and they attack you.
Yeah,
that usually gets them excited and then gets them out of like a whatever, and then maybe they figure it out after that. At the very least, it's good combat. I like that idea in the sense of maybe having something in your back pocket, but I really believe that at the very least, have motivations for what these encounters are, right? So the consequences of that first encounter with the gnolls were such that now the leader of this settlement is like, I want you to go out there and like try to figure out what the fuck is going on. There's people being attacked by gnolls. Like, I know that, some gnolls used to be here and that the natives of this island fought them off. But like, we need to be on patrol, so can you please figure this out for me? Then you go here and it informs the next bit of this quest or whatever. But it all started with that one encounter that almost seemed like, oh, our first encounter is there are gnolls here. Right. Which is like, yeah, those are great monsters to use. But I had a whole thing about why they are there, which you haven't figured out yet exactly. Which maybe you will, maybe you won't, who knows? Yeah. I have a whole thing as to why Jens and Emil were on the island and why they wanted to do that, and how they got this map and like what they wanted to do with it, blah blah, all this stuff. And you can probably figure that out. If not now, maybe later, right? Yeah. But there are reasons for all of that. And I wanted to show, again, saying this again, I wanted to show that you guys like got another win. And then leading up to something that was supposed to be as difficult as this, right? So like, I can't wait until you get to the encounter. I'm like, all right, this is the difficult one, and then you guys are like,
just wipe the floor with them, yeah.
Which is sometimes it happens, right? Mm-hmm. Especially with the Nanabush was supposed to be a mildly difficult fight. Maybe not as difficult as this, but like pretty close to this. Like I would want to have gotten you guys to the point where like, oh fuck, like if we don't play our cards right, we're gonna probably die. Not like, fuck, I need to think of something right fucking now or we're all going to die. I wanted you guys to think like, okay, we just need to like play smart. And you played smarter than I expected you to in the Nanabush fight, because you took away the one mechanic that sort of my mechanics hinged on, which was its ability to fly.
Right.
Which
I obliterated combat balance by having a silver bullet.
Exactly. Which is fine. Like that's the best part of using your character like that, right? Like you fucking win, which is great. And I loved that. Yeah. And then on the flip side, you get an encounter like this where it's like, I wrote it to be a fun, not one-off, but a fun thing that maybe you could reference later. And it ended up being the encounter that I wanted you to have with the Nanabush.
Well, and that's the thing. That's the thing too. Is if you're using CR or some modification of that for balance, you gotta factor in preparation. Right? Oh yeah. The Nanabush was a half or a quarter of its potential because I was able to prepare. And these guys, not only did they get the surprise round, not only did they get to this, and so on and so forth, but because we didn't know that fight was happening, we couldn't prepare tactically.
True. But circling fully back around to your question, I guess now that, and I don't even know, I have no idea if that is necessarily how Jenna is going to feel about this or whatever, or if how Garrett's going to feel. Jamie wasn't even there, right? Right. But hearing you say that, I had been thinking about like, all right, so like, how am I going to continue on with like certain interactions after this, right? And I really do like the idea of, at least for now, while you guys are level 3, maybe even till like, I don't know, until the point where you'll get to the point where it's like, okay, clearly random dude at the bar is not going to be able to step to me. I'm level 10, like whatever, you know what I mean? But when you're at this level, it's like, I like that sort of air of, we can't just say or do whatever the fuck we want. You know what I mean? I don't like that in a game in general. It kind of gets that way when you get like past level 10 or something like that. Unless specifically you're like, if you're in a town, you can basically do whatever the fuck you want. Like you're level 10, you can just slap people around, right?
Right. Unless you're in Whisperhold.
Unless you're in Whisperhold. That is true.
Then you think you can slap people around, and then
you certainly cannot.
We probably could have got TPK'd there too, to be honest.
Yeah, you probably could have. Which is so funny. But no, yeah, I like keeping that air of, okay, this is a lived-in, real, dangerous world. You know what I mean? I like that sort of air. I don't like how I sort of went about that last campaign where you were always running. So I like the fact that you guys have a moderate amount of minor downtime. Like when you're like, okay, we can go back to the inn and rest, or like go, and we can have a shopping episode where you guys go to blacksmith and do whatever. Like I like letting you guys have that. But I also like the idea of, okay, well, I can't just like, I love that sort of like moment where, and I'm not referencing Garrett, but because he's playing the rogue, but I love that moment in a game where the rogue player is like, oh, I'm just going to steal this. And they do, and that's part of their class, quote unquote. And then they've succeeded at like a couple times. And then finally it's like, I come in with the boom, no, you can't do that, or you can do that, but here's what fucking happens.
Right, because he just robbed like a Knight Templar or something.
Or whatever, and they're like down to smite you. You know what I mean? Like it's like all these times before that, I got away with it, or I failed, but nothing really happened. And then that moment when it does happen, it's like, oh shit, you know what I mean? And that makes the game a little bit more interesting to me. Yeah. So long as you don't go all the way and. Right. But that's sometimes how the dice is. So
maybe the flavor or whatever is simply that there are other adventurers on this island and in this world, and they might be better coordinated and better prepared than us.
Yeah. And plus, you guys have only known each other for like 3 years. These guys seemingly had known each other for a long time. Yeah. So but I think that we have talked enough about our game. I think that I've gotten some good information from you. Used to my advantage.
No.
But I think it was a fruitful conversation for people who are like maybe actively playing. But moving forward, I would love to jump into figuring out who this monster hunting ranger
monster slayer is.
Yes. So we'll pull up the D&D Beyond right now. D&D Beyond, sponsor us.
Just do
Figure it out, dude.
Come
like
on.
What the hell?
I can write a song.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, Matt, you are actually a brilliant songwriter.
Yeah, so it's true.
It's true. He actually is. Okay, we'll go to collections. We'll go to my characters. I believe it is an unnamed champion. Hero with no name.
Oh, hell yeah.
How sad. Edit. Cool.
I like that that's something you typed in. That's not the default.
No, it does that.
Oh, it does?
It does that. If you don't put a name in there, and then you like go through and like pick a class, it makes it hero with no name.
Okay, mine it just says like Malcolm Hex's blah 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 blah.
Yes, but I think that
Maybe it's a setting or something.
I don't know, maybe. Well, anyways, pretty dope.
Well, yeah.
But we've picked out the class and the subclass. We haven't picked out anything sort of in particular about what that subclass is going to do. But why don't we... So actually, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Should we pick the race first, or do we want to roll some stats first?
We can... I mean, let's roll some stats.
Let's roll some stats. Why not?
Yeah, why not? How do you want to do it?
I am
use the Dicey method, or you want to just...
I like to use the Dicey method and I think this is how a lot of people do it. I love just rolling 4d6 and dropping the lowest, adding the other 3 together. It allows for your maximum roll to be 18. And my general rule is I don't like it when players have more than one negative stat. But so like I generally let people re-roll. Like if you get anything less than an 8, generally I'm just like re-roll it or take an 8. Usually what I like to do.
I'll take a 7.
Oh yeah,
I ain't afraid of no 7.
No, 7's are fine.
I'd be afraid of like a 3. Which
3 is to me I'm like mechanically
that
doesn't do it like doesn't make any sense.
At some point if it's too low, your character can't live in the world.
Exactly.
So but that like kind of like 6 to 6 or 7, 6 to 9.
Yeah.
It's a good range.
6 to 9 is fine, especially after, if anybody has watched the first campaign of Critical Role, Travis Willingham's character, Grog, had a 6 intelligence. And it was perfect. It was
amazing.
Flawless. Probably the best character I've ever...
Yeah.
It's so good.
I think the best for me, the best roll that I could make is like 1 6 and 1 18. You know what I mean? I just want to be really good at some stuff
and then be
really bad at other stuff because it's fun. Anyway, so I'm going to start rolling.
Go for it. Right. So 4... Yeah. We're going to roll d6 4 times and tell me what it is. Hell yeah.
Okay, well, we started with an 8.
Started with an 8. Perfect. All right. So I'm not going to put it in anything. I'm just going to put them front to back. So we're going to go at 8.
And that was a 9.
Okay. Strong start.
I like it.
So we're going to keep going. And I'll have you make some rerolls.
Yeah, it's 15.
15. That's a
good roll.
Strong roll. Very good.
That's another 15.
Another 15. Wow.
See,
right.
I'm already loving this. 2 15s and 2 -1s. This is
perfect.
Great.
Actually, that's fine. Yeah.
Hell yeah. It's a 14.
14. All right. So far, actually, more great stats than bad.
And another 9.
And another 9. Okay, so here's what we're going to do.
This is really fun.
So seeing these numbers, what I would suggest is I would do 2 things. One, and not suggest, this is what I would tell you as a DM.
Right, because
if you're a DM
you're a man with no integrity at all.
That is correct.
And you would just turn them all into 16s and then be done.
Yeah, of course. And be like, well, why wouldn't we just be good at everything? Right. But if you're a DM watching this and maybe your player rolls some bad stats or whatever, or you're a player and you're like, fuck, like 3 good stats, actually. And then 3 bad ones. Not bad, but like negatives, which is bad.
And there's no 16, 17, 18 here.
No.
So let's not get it twisted. Like this is not going to be an OP character.
Nope.
But 2 15s and a 14. Like this is probably I would say pretty equivalent to like a standard array.
I would say so. It's
but better because extremes in my head are better.
Yeah, extremes are better. Yeah,
I'd rather have an extra 15 and an 8 instead of like a 10.
Yes.
Or whatever.
I completely agree. Generally between classes, honestly, you have like 2 to 3, people call them dump stats. You have 2 to 3 stats or whatever that just don't,
which mechanically just don't
matter until like you need to make a save, right? So this is what I would do. This is what I'm going to have you do as a DM. Me being the DM, you being the player. We're keeping the 8. 8's great. I'm gonna bump one of the 9s up to a 10, so it's neutral.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna have you re-roll the 9, and we are taking this roll whatever it is. So if it's an 8 or lower or whatever, if it's lower than a 6, we're not doing that just because I think that's stupid. We're just gonna re-roll. So I'm gonna bump one of those 9s up to a 10. We're keeping the 8, and we're gonna re-roll this 9.
Okay. Because again, you have no integrity.
Correct.
Okay. That's a 10.
A 10. So almost didn't change anything. You just have 2 neutral stats now.
Yep.
And so actually now I think this is probably one of the better balanced character stats that we've seen.
Yeah, this is now quite close to a standard array.
Yes.
And by the way, just even though we're not going to do it today, I would say that if you roll a character that has, again, as a player, and I'm a little bit of a, I mean, I'm an optimizer. Like I want my characters to be effective. As a player, if I roll 2 high scores, I almost don't give a shit.
Sure.
About having low scores. So if I got, I've never rolled a character with 3 negatives, but if I had 3 negative scores, but I know I'm going to be functional because my other scores are high enough, I'm just thinking about in character generation that this is, maybe your classic, chip on his shoulder character because he, was never the smartest guy and never the strongest guy and never the fastest guy, right? And there's my whatever, there's my 3. But here I am, I'm a hero anyway because I'm dope as fuck at these other things. So, that would have been a stat block that I would not have been afraid of.
Sure.
And even if you had some lower ones, again, as long as you have okay constitution, and then your primary, secondary scores are good. Then you're fine. But anyway,
completely agree.
So,
no, and actually, I will say this. Obviously, mechanically, there's no difference between an 8 and a 9 based on your the modifier. But I would also even go as far as to say, like, a 9 and a 10, yes, one of them is a -1. It's very rare that you're going to be making a roll and then be 1 off on something. Or be off of it by the 1 because you took the negative. A 10 to me is almost just as bad as a 9 because you're not adding anything to it. So, like, really, we ended up not changing much. It's just you're going to see neutral things on your stat sheet rather than a negative.
Yeah, because the exception to that is going to be your primary scores, right?
Right.
If you're a rogue, you're going to be rolling dex a lot.
Yep.
So the difference between a -1 and a 0, or even a 2 and a 3 or whatever is going to add up. But if we're talking about your, the athletics check that you're going to roll 3 times the whole campaign, if it's a -1 or a 1 or a 0, makes no difference.
Yes.
Essentially. So yeah.
So what we're working with, again, to reiterate, is an 8, 2 10s, a 14, and 2 15s. Now, obviously, we're playing Ranger. The most used stat as a Ranger is generally going to be Dexterity. That's our combat stat. And then the one after that, I believe, is Wisdom because that is the basis of our spells.
Spellcasting.
Now, generally, spellcasting for half-casters doesn't usually really heavily rely on, like, your spellcasting modifier. It's really just to buff yourself, right? So I'm not too worried about using whatever for our Wisdom. That's fine if we're talking strictly mechanically. I think that it's pretty safe to put one of our 15s in Dexterity.
Yeah, I think the obvious thing to do is 15 in the Dex.
Yep.
Another 15 in either Constitution or Wisdom, and then the 14 in the whichever one's left.
Gotcha.
And I think then we have 2 10s and an 8.
2 10s.
Yeah, and so then you just decide if you want this person to be a little dumber, a little weaker, or a little less charismatic.
Right.
If I'm thinking about a monster slayer, probably not terribly charismatic.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Probably not terribly charismatic.
Probably doesn't give too much of a shit about, like, how people feel about how he interacts with them too much. Especially, it's like, well, in my head, this person is already like, I fucking fight monsters, dude. Like, I don't give a shit about your small talk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, charismatic people generally either can deal with small talk or can speak beyond that to the point where whatever you're talking about is interesting, right? If you are dealing with, like, deadly creatures on a day-to-day basis, or that's what you're trying to do or whatever, it stands to reason to me where it's like probably most people who do that aren't gonna fucking care about how the weather is, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or they do simply for the fact of now I know I can see these tracks better or whatever because there was recent rainfall and now there's mud on the ground, you know what I mean?
Now, if you envision this character as, like, having, big bravado, and after they slay a monster, they go back to the inn and they're bragging in the town square, and you want them to be able to kind of be sort of performative and whatever. You can bump charisma a little bit.
Yeah.
Again, we're splitting hairs because the difference between a 0 and a 1
Is
or a -1 in these sort of, like, tertiary stats
Right.
is not really going to matter.
Yeah.
The one thing though that I do think that we should do before we finalize these,
Sure.
we can sort of temporarily or tentatively finalize them where they are. I would, because I don't know. Of course, Monster Slayers evoke something,
Yep.
but I don't know mechanically how they work. Because I could also see a Monster Slayer being one of the sort of strength-based rangers of legend.
Sure.
If you imagine that I'm going to leap upon the back of this beast and wrestle it to the ground and stab it with my greatsword. There's not. You and I have actually had this conversation a little bit in the past. To me, I don't entirely understand why there's less mechanical support for a strength ranger than a dex ranger.
I know.
Because I just to me, a ranger, obviously they have they're kind of half druid, but I could see them being, typically they're sort of thought as the rogue druid, but I could see them being like a barbarian druid.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Certainly.
So maybe we just read off the at least the initial Monster Slayer abilities and
Sure.
see if that evokes anything.
Absolutely. So again, you would be choosing the subclass at level 3. So you get a couple things at level 3. 3 in particular for the Monster Slayers. The first thing is Monster Slayer Magic. So that basically just gives you additional spells for your class. Mm-hmm. At 3rd level, you get Protection from Evil and Good.
Okay.
So makes sense. 5th level, you get Zone of Truth, which is very interesting.
That is very interesting.
Very interesting. 9th, you get Magic Circle, which makes sense to me because that's sort of a blockade against like a creature or something like that you can dictate. 13th, you get Banishment, which makes sense. And 17th, you get Hold Monster, which again makes sense. Zone of Truth is very interesting at 5th level to me.
Very interesting. Actually, the whole list is already, I mean, that is certainly uniquely interesting.
Yes.
The whole list is telling me one thing, which is that this is not a hunter.
No.
Which there's a different subclass called Hunter.
Yep.
So when you think Monster Slayer, this is not hunting great beasts. Spells like Protection from Evil and Good and Magic Circle are telling me that this person is hunting fiends, hunting celestials,
Yep.
hunting sort of other planar, extra
Especially
planar.
with Banishment.
Yep.
Yeah. Stuff
Banishment.
like that. For sure.
So this is someone that's hunting extra planar stuff, which is great.
Yeah,
And
I
good
love
to know. So then Zone of Truth, God, does that even work?
It wouldn't work against a creature that wouldn't know what lying is, right? So
right.
So I guess Zone of Truth, in my mind, it would make sense to include that only if the monsters that you're hunting are intelligent enough to where you need to glean more information from them. So that would be certain fiends. Certainly, if you're hunting like undead, at a certain level, they become intelligent, right? Like if you're a vampire hunter or something like that.
I suppose you could maybe you capture a lesser devil and they can give you information about their archdevils or their society or whatever.
Certainly.
So very interesting. So we're not only talking about a character that is hunting extraplanar beings, but also probably infiltrating, because Zone of Truth tells me that they're not just walking up and slaughtering them.
No.
That they have probably some greater mission.
Right.
That
Makes
they're
sense
going
to me.
after.
Now, actually, hilariously enough, based on what we just said, how they're not hunters, they have an ability called Hunter's Sense. At 3rd level, you gain the ability to peer at a creature and magically discern how best to hurt it. Very cool.
That's
very
dope
sick.
as hell.
So
All right.
cool. As an action, choose one creature you can see within 60 feet of you. You immediately learn whether the creature has any damage, immunities, resistances, or vulnerabilities, and what they are. Fucking awesome.
Yeah. Also, you learn if the character has poor self-esteem.
Yeah. Yes.
The best way to hurt me.
The best way to hurt me is by making fun of how long my legs are, and I hate it. Too funny, holy shit. You get to learn their insecurities. If the creature is... Look at that high-waisted man. He got feminine hips.
That'd be a great ability.
Oh, that'd be so funny. Yeah, homebrew that, everybody. Okay, continuing. If the creature is hidden from divination magic, you sense that it has no damage, immunities, resistances, or vulnerabilities. That's very interesting. I like that they added like a little crux to that.
Okay.
You can use this feature a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier. Okay, so that's actually good to know. Some keeping track of like how often you can use that there.
Yep.
You regain that once you finish long rest. So that's a fucking awesome ability. Economy wise, you're using your action But this is very good at the start of a combat, or if you have the jump on something or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, the problem with ability, first of all, flavor-wise, I love this ability.
So sick.
So I'm not complaining about
Right.
it. In my mind, the problem with abilities like this is two things. Is one, this is going to do nothing against, I don't know, 85% of the monsters in the manual who don't have damage resistance.
Exactly.
Right. Secondly, I, as a player, I try not to use metagame information in my decision making.
Right.
But it's not going to take very long playing this game to realize that, again, if this is someone that's hunting, my problem here is story wise, I'm thinking that this is probably going to be a character that maybe has a grudge against the devils of the Nine Hells.
Sure.
Right. And they're focused on killing and infiltrating and unearthing these creatures, right? This person doesn't need to use an action in combat to be like, oh, devils have like, to me, this is just something where I would say, why wouldn't this character just be like, yo, as your DM, I'm telling you that that devils are resistant to fire, right? So again, it's a cool flavor ability. I don't think it's effective in terms of like mechanically or powerful, but it's very cool and it certainly informs the character.
Yes. I think a super easy way to fix this, because then it also informs like mechanically, like, okay, like how am I going to, because as a ranger you have a lot of stuff that you do as a bonus action. Mm-hmm. So honestly, like I think just quote unquote fixing this or just making this a little bit more relevant, because the things that you're going to be going after you already fucking know about. This is obviously good for shit that you don't know about. Right. And you can be like, all right, I'm just going to fucking look at this for a second, whatever. Just make this why this is an action, I don't really understand. I really don't get why this is an action, but whatever.
Yeah. I think this could literally be when you roll initiative, you can make a check or something.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
To me, this is, you've selected this subclass. I'm just going to give you this information because this is what you're good at. But whatever. We're not trying to argue subclass design today, although that's certainly something
we can talk about later.
We could argue it.
And then probably my favorite part mechanically of the Monster Slayer is Slayer's Prey.
Is this also a third level?
This is also a third level. Okay. This is all third level.
So
right
that's good, because probably that means that Hunter's sense is really more of what they call ribbon feature. It's just mostly for flavor anyway. Right. So okay.
Starting at third level, you can focus your ire on one foe, increasing the harm you inflict on it. As a bonus action, that makes sense all right, anyways. Yep. As a bonus action, you designate one creature you can see within 60 feet of you as the target of this feature. The first time each turn that you hit that target with a weapon attack, it takes an extra 1d6 damage from the weapon. This benefit lasts until you finish a short or long rest. It ends early if you designate a different creature.
Okay.
I mean, just straight up.
Just extra d6 damage once per round.
Exactly. Right. Which is strong.
Hell yeah.
Especially at third level.
So I think that you could do this as a strength ranger, but I think nothing here like tells me that like, oh, I really want to be a strength ranger.
This was meant for a strength ranger.
So I think we stick with kind of your classic build of Dex, just because Dex is just a more useful ability score in general. But yeah, hell yeah.
I know that we're starting at the third level. I think it's important to like look at the extra stuff, just to like be like, okay, like this is like what the class is sort of meant for. Mm-hmm. And I think a fun thing to understand, maybe this makes sense as to why like you're getting certain spells that we were talking about earlier. Fourth level, you get ASI, which is ability score improvement or a feat. Extra attack at fifth level, that's normal. So at seventh level, you get supernatural defense. You gain an extra resilience against your prey's assaults on your mind and body whenever the target of your Slayer's Prey forces you to make a saving throw. And whenever you make an ability check to escape that target's grapple, you add a d6. So not only do you get a d6 damage on it, whatever your Slayer's Prey is, you get a d6 defense against it, which is fucking awesome.
Very cool.
And then finally, there's some other stuff, but what I really like, at 11th level, you get Magic User's Nemesis. At 11th level, you gain the ability to thwart someone else's magic. When you see a creature casting a spell or teleporting, so this could just be like, you know how Jamie asks all the time, is this a charm or is this a spell? Yep. A lot of monsters just have abilities that just happen. So this is good for that too. When you see a creature casting a spell or teleporting within 60 feet of you, you can use your reaction to try to magically foil it. The creature must succeed a wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC, or its spell or teleport fails and is wasted. Once you use this, short or long rest. That's fucking awesome.
That's
which
awesome.
Very clearly tells me that the monsters, quote unquote, that you're hunting
Are intelligent. Intelligent. They're not just burly beasts.
Yep.
These are spellcasters. These are devils and angels that are casting spells and doing all kinds of stuff. Yeah, this is cool as hell, man.
Super dope.
I like this. It's cool giving kind of like a faux counterspell to obviously this is a partial spellcaster or a half caster, but it's a pretty cool suite of things to give to a ranger.
I agree. I guess that being said, do we feel comfortable locking in our stats right now? I mean, we don't need to lock them in, but be like, all right, so this is what we're going with right now.
I think it's good. I mean, I think if you ever make Constitution your fourth or lowest highest roll, you're doing something a little crazy.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a no-brainer. And I mean, look, I think these are pretty much no-brainers here.
Yeah.
And I will just note that I think Wisdom is going to be maybe a little more important to this character than maybe your average ranger. Not the most, but it keys off on the number of times you can do the Hunter Sense, the faux counterspell later in life. So it's good that we have at least a 14 in Wisdom.
And then it also mechanically to me, it sort of, and also flavor wise, it makes sense to have a bit of a higher Wisdom if you're like a tracker, or if you're like someone who is trying to discern where something is or someone is, or where they, how you can hurt them or whatever. It makes more sense that you have maybe a higher perception or insight or whatever. So say what the stats are right now. So strength, we've got 10, dexterity 15, constitution 15, intelligence 10, wisdom 14, charisma 18.
I think it's good.
I think it's great.
It is kind of funny that there's not that many spells that force charisma saving throws, but probably, I mean, this is purely off the top of my head, I imagine that probably many of them are coming from devils and angels.
Sure.
Like things like banishment, right?
Definitely.
So it is funny that maybe this character is specifically not as equipped to take on that kind of an attack.
Yeah.
But I think it's perfect.
Yeah.
I like it.
Very cool. I'd say for now, maybe we decide on a race that we want to go with, and then we can call it there for now. And then we finish this character up probably next week.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we got a 15 in Dex.
15 in Dex. Yep.
Do you want to? I think it's very clear based on all the things that Wizards of the Coast has done recently that, in their view, strongly tying ability scores to races is not something that they think is important,
right?
And they're going away from it. So, for the sake of doing this, do we want to use the new options to make your ability scores go to whatever we want, or do we want to stick to the standard, the old standard? Right?
So I guess the only thing that and
the reason I asked that, just to preface it, is for example, let's say I want to make a character that is focused on hunting devils, as I've kind of been talking about a little bit.
Right.
It could be interesting as sort of like a blade kind of a thing to be a tiefling. Right.
Sure.
A tiefling that's hunting down devils would be kind of a cool thing, right? But tieflings get +2 charisma and +1 intelligence. Certainly mechanically, it's hot garbage for us, right?
It's funny that you say that.
I know that there
are the 10 variant tieflings,
right. Yes.
And which basically gives you the option to pick any stat, any stat sort of combo that you want, because you get to pick which devil that you get your blood from.
Yep.
So there's that.
Yep. So that is an option. But I guess in general, and same thing with Azamars, right? Azamars would also be equally interesting. The Fallen Angel looking for retribution or just like vengeance, right? But again, they get that +2 charisma. So I think we need to decide that before we go down this path.
Yes. I think that the one thing that I would be missing of like doing custom lineage, basically, because correct me if I'm wrong, I could be misunderstanding that, but if we want custom lineage.
Oh, not custom lineage, but there's the optional rules now that basically let you take any playable race and just swap their ability scores.
Oh. Is that what is that? Is that just a retcon, or is that?
It came out in Tasha's.
Oh,
it's one of the many optional rules.
Got it.
And all of the recent races that have come out from like Beyond the Witchlight and some of the new books that have come out. Now what they all say, like, you pick this race and then you can just either take a +2 and a +1 wherever you want, or 3 +1s wherever you want.
Oh, interesting.
So they are fully detaching ability scores, specific ability scores to specific races, and I would expect that when there are new editions of D&D that will be fully separate.
So I'm cool with doing that. Okay, so the one thing I was confused about, because I thought it was just gonna be custom lineage or whatever.
Yeah.
Where I believe it's +2, +1, and then you get a feat or something like that.
It's just +2.
Oh, just +2, and then you get a feat.
And then you get a feat.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. I love some of the racial abilities that you get, like for some of these things. So I was worried that we were going to miss out on that. But if that's the case, I don't necessarily mind that too much, because whatever, like if you really want to, that's the thing. If you really want to like play a non-optimized, like odd character, you can still do that. You can just move the stats into completely non-optimal things. You know what I mean? So it's like whatever. So I don't mind doing that.
It doesn't matter to me. Like, I guess we've already talked about sort of the Tiefling and Aasimar kind of blade style, like hunting their own trope, which I think is super dope.
Right.
But if we want to keep it more traditional, because this is our first character, and we want to stick to the OG, status alignments, we want Dex.
We want Dex, yep,
for sure, and then
generally want wisdom,
right? Wisdom, maybe Con. So I mean, the things that immediately come to mind: Elf for sure. Elf is a classic for a ranger. +2 Dex.
Right.
They get elves and half elves are dumb in this game. They get so much stuff.
Oh my god.
Which makes basically all the other races other than Variant Human look like why?
Yeah, exactly.
So elves are obviously a strong choice. Yep. Goblin might be interesting.
Goblin might be super interesting. I was actually thinking if we went with one of the more monstrous races, because I think that would be interesting.
Yeah.
In addition to Aasimar or Tiefling, like I would love to check out Full-blooded orc. I just think that's super interesting. I love half orcs in general. Anytime I'm like making a character just for fun, I always gravitate towards half orc. I don't know why. I love them so much.
Orcs are going to get saddled with a +2 strength, so not exactly where we want to be here. But could have been interesting if we wanted to do a strength ranger.
Strength ranger, yeah.
In fact, a full-blooded orc as a strength ranger just looks cool in my mind's eye.
Sick as hell.
What's so goblins get +2 to Dex? What's their secondary that they get +2?
Great question. So their secondary is Con, actually.
Con. So that's perfectly good.
Yep.
In fact, this might be a case if you can get a +2 Dex and a +1 Con. This might be a case where you move the 15 to Con and the 14 to Dex, and now you just get 2 16s to start, which is quite good.
Yeah. There's Halfling as well.
Halfling is another with +2 Dex, right? And then I think they get pluses to Wisdom.
It depends on which one you pick. So Stout, you get where are you? Hello?
Hello?
Why doesn't it show me? Very weird.
Sometimes the way they stack is kind of weird.
Very odd. Yeah, maybe okay, so Halfling, Lightfoot, Lucky, Brave, Halfling. It just straight up doesn't tell me.
It might not modify. It might just be in the base Halfling.
That's annoying.
Oh, yeah, that's
weird.
That's weird. Things like
the Ghostwise Halfling from
Charisma.
It's Wisdom.
Oh, it is Wisdom.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the other ones might be different.
Yeah. So Halfling's a good choice. Goblin's a cool choice. Elf. I mean, something like a Tabaxi. Or even a Kenku. I mean, I don't advise players to play Kenku.
No, I don't think.
And I think if you play a Kenku and you don't do the mimicry, then just don't play a Kenku.
Yeah, dude. Like it's the whole point of the
right.
Yeah.
I think Kenku are almost the NPCs exclusively, or NPCs. And then like Aarakocra would also be very good.
Aarakocra would be good.
They're banned at most tables.
In my game, I do not allow players to play Aarakocra.
Yeah, it would be very interesting to play an Aarakocra. But yeah, I mean, we could do something as classic as Elf or Halfling or Goblin. I kind of like Goblin.
I like Goblin a lot, actually.
Yeah, I think that's fun. The little Goblin that's hunting these very powerful races, monsters. I think that's cool.
And I love the to make up for the fact that you are a goblin, like, and in any general game, like, you are going to be like either looked down upon or whatever because you're a monstrous race, right? Mm-hmm. So like for the RP in any sort of usual game is going to be a little bit more difficult on your end. I love to make up for that. They get some of the gnarliest fucking racials in the entire game. Fury of the Small is nuts. For those of you who don't know, the racial ability of the goblin, one of them, is Fear of the Small. When you damage a creature with an attack or spell, and the creature's size is larger than yours, so basically everything, almost, you can cause the attack or spell to deal extra damage to the creature. The extra damage equals your level. Once you use this trait, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. Like, that's just great.
It's just free damage.
So good.
Yeah.
And then Nimble Escape. Fun. Yeah, it's super fun. Nimble Escape, you just get the rogue disengage or hide as a bonus action.
Which is great. And
then Dark Vision, obviously, which is awesome. They reach adulthood at age 8 and live up to 60 years.
Perfect.
Dex +2, Con +1.
Anything else in there? Are there any racial skills?
There is, let's see, the languages you get. No, I don't think so.
Might not be.
Just Dark Vision, Fear of the Small, Nimble Escape, and then you get Common and Goblin.
That's okay. I mean, Rangers are a pretty good skill class anyway, so
I agree. They get a lot of skills.
We'll be okay with skills. And so yeah, I mean,
hell yeah.
If we wanna kind of not move beyond that, I mean, I'm just thinking we got this, tiny little furious goblin who's probably been. I mean, could be a character that's been wronged by somebody. It could just be like a trophy hunter, like a treasure hunter, right? Like someone with a big ego. Someone with a connection to black market for devil horns or something. I mean, it could be anything, right?
Yeah, why not?
But it's a fun idea for a monster slayer to be a teeny little goblin.
I agree. All right, well, fuck yeah. Next week, we're gonna figure out the sort of fully realized version of this little guy, this little goblin monster hunter ranger. Very excited about that. Matt, thanks for joining me again.
Yeah.
Sorry about we had a little bit of technical difficulties at the beginning of this before you guys showed up. So figured that out. But this is, obviously, if you couldn't tell, this is pre-recorded. So this is going to be going up actually in like 4 hours or so. Super excited about that. We do have, just to remind everyone, tomorrow, because this is recorded the same day. Tomorrow we have our live game. We have episode 6 of the Great Nelidian Crown, A Little Dicey Dungeons and Dragons, right here on this channel, same time, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, every Wednesday. And we're going to be playing back with a full party again. So very excited about that. We're going to see what exactly is going to be coming out of this recent combat that nearly killed you guys.
Very interesting as the trail of bodies behind us piles up.
Yes.
As we get jumped around every corner.
Oh, yeah. The excitement never stops. But thank you guys so much for joining us this evening. I've been Salvatore. This has been Matt. Matt.
Not Mac.
Not Mac. Matt. And we will be seeing you next week. So take it easy. All right. Fuck yeah, brother.
Yeah,
Give it up.